Part one video was about getting all the, getting it painted and doing all the prep work to put the stone up. And this video here is the second part that shows the stone actually being installed. There is a video that I previously did about this evolution saw that I really put to good use for this job. And, if you have any interest in the saw, you may want to look at it. But anyhow, I got the stones. I started laying them out and cutting the first couple of rows. And I also spread out pretty much all that I needed to get the collar and the fit put together on them. So then I got some of this mortar mix that's made for putting down stone, I was told, and it was time to start mixing up some of that. And I decided to mix up about a third of the bag to start out with. So I added the water that they specified, and then I just took the bag, cut it open, and poured about a third of it in. And definitely, I didn't have a dust mask on, but you should. I wound up holding my breath until I got this stuff in there and everything cleared out, because it did make a pretty fine cloud of dust when I poured it. So I just mixed it up. I took a stick, and you can get some fancy mixers for these and stuff, but all they had available at the time was a stick, so I just took that and, mixed it good and added a little bit more water until I finally got to the exact consistency that I wanted. And, you get it to this point, and it's not perfectly mixed, but it's pretty close, and you just let it sit for 10 minutes, they say, to slag off or whatever it is. And then I had to pick up a trowel for this, and you let it sit for the 10 minutes, and then you go back and you actually mix it again. I think they call it slaking or something like that, but I didn't really pay too much attention. So you mix it up again good. I got it mixed up real nice. There are some lumps in it. It's a little bit like lumpy grits, but it's 100% usable the way it is. So then you start by applying the mortar mix to the back of each of the individual tiles that are all glued up. This is, you just got to be careful that you don't get too much of it over the edges and stuff, because it is a pain to clean off. But, it's finished once you put it up. There is no grouting or anything, so you do want to keep it off the face there. But, you just basically have to spread a layer with the trowel, notch trowel in the back of it, and then just push the piece up against the wall and take a rubber hammer and just tap it in, and it kind of flattens out the mortar on the back and evens it out and spreads it out, and gets the tile to be sitting fairly flat on the wall, because there is a lot of bowing and warping in these tiles. They're not made perfectly, so it's just you do as long as you got everything set up and leveled properly and ready to go in the beginning, it's really a pretty easy job. And it's just a matter of battering up one tile after the next and just putting it on the wall, and just kind of tapping it a little bit to make sure you get that mortar spread in there good behind the tiles. And then you have to check them for level every once in a while, because like I said, the tiles are not perfect. So one of the tricks that I did find was I had a stack of like old expired credit cards and old gift cards and stuff like that I just had stacked in a drawer in the desk, and I dug them out, and it turned out that they were perfect for spacers if I had to space something up. I think they were about 30 thousandths thick when you used them, so you could just space it up so you really didn't even see it to get any of these tiles back to level if they were a little bit off, because like I said, you want to lay them out and match them up before you start, because of the color match, and also because there are some differences in each tile, and you want to try to get them as close to a good fit as possible. So this was actually was a pretty fun job. It wasn't that hard to do. It just took a little bit of time, and it was kind of rewarding to watch them go up as they went up and stuff. And, it was like you were done once they were up too. So I continued on with this first batch of mortar. It actually got me about half of the way up the wall. And I didn't want to finish the whole wall all in one shot just because I was worried about maybe something letting loose or, slipping off or something like that. So what I did is I did the bottom half of the wall, as you can see here, and then I just let it sit for maybe about an hour before I mixed up the next batch of mortar to actually start going up, finish off the rest of it. And you can see how fast I can go after a couple cups of coffee here. No, it's I just sped this up a little bit to cut the video a little bit shorter. But it's just the same thing. Just you mortar each tile and you put it up and you clean off the edges and then just tap it in place. And by making sure that you have everything cut beforehand, it works out to be a pretty easy job. And they do go up. I was real happy with the way they went up and the way they were, I was able to match the colors and stuff on them. So it, it did take a couple hours by the time I got done doing this, but still, it wasn't really hard work. It was just, it was just repetitive type work. And like I said before, I've seen some videos on YouTube where people put stone like this up just using construction adhesive, and I have to say that I just couldn't recommend doing that because the tiles just they're just not flat enough to put up with like a thin layer of adhesive or anything. They really need something to bed them in and make them be bonded good to the that backing substrate. So I really think that mortar is the easiest way to go. And I think the bag of mortar was only like about $11 for the whole bag of it, which is supposed to be more than enough to get the job done. So it was, it was just a matter of doing a couple at a time. And there you can see, you have to level it as you go, like I said. And I'd slip a putty knife in to pull it up a little bit, and then put a old credit card in there to just hold it in place till it dried. And then this Evolution Ridge saw really, saved the day with this job. I was able to make real nice precision cuts, so everything came out lining up good, and it didn't really do any damage. And there you can see my spacers. They were just the right thickness, so you couldn't actually see the gap. And I was pretty amazed putting this up also that when it went up, it's really hard to notice the way that they lap. And there's the first half that I got up with the first batch of mortar, and I let them sit for a while, and then I mixed up another batch to finish the rest of the way up. And one thing we did notice after getting this stone up, and it was only probably about maybe between the wonder board and the stone, maybe about 350, 400 pounds of mass that was added behind the wood stove there. But the wood stove seems to retain the heat overnight much better. The room seems to stay a lot more even from nighttime till morning now. So I think it did make a big difference in the, it's not a lot of thermal mass, but it actually did make a difference in the evenness of the heat in the room there. So it really was, was worth doing just for that, I think. I was pretty amazed by all the different colors and shades of these stones that were available on HomeDepot.com when I finally, did find them. And in the end, I'd almost say that this is a fairly easy job that just about anybody could do if they have access to, a saw just to cut the tiles accurately. Because that's really about the only big thing you have to worry about is just, making square cuts and, making them the proper length to have the job come out good. And I did actually buy some sealer that they recommended to put on the surface of these, but right now I'm not going to do anything with them. I'm going to wait till next spring when it's warmer out and I can actually open the windows wide and get my wife out of the house because she really can't stand any chemicals. So I figure I'll put that off until in the springtime. But I don't really think that they'll need sealing where they are anyway. That that they won't really require it, but I'll do it anyway in the future. So it was the same thing over and over again. Just butter up the tiles there and put them in place, and it really I was amazed just how nice it really looked for just being a simple installation like this. Now the only place I had to cut some tiles the long way was up at the top. They came out about a 1/16 less than a half of a tile, so I could split a tile. And I had this old Harbor Freight. It's a wet saw that I bought years ago that I got out to do that with. Now, it's kind of useless as a wet saw because it just throws water all over everything. So, I'm just using it as a dry saw here to get the job done because I only had to actually split 2 tiles. But, basically I had to put a bandana around my face just to keep the dust out. You really need some kind of dust collection when dealing with these, this wet saw using it dry like this. So I was able to split the tiles, and it did do a nice job on them. And luckily it was just about the perfect width. You can see there's like only a 1/16 cut off the top of that one to make it fit right. So the last thing was just to get them buttered up and put in place. I did put some masking tape on the ceiling, and I put them up. I had cut them about a 1/16 of an inch, or maybe a 32nd shy of fitting in there tight so I wouldn't mess up the ceiling. And then I just went back with some of those credit card shims, and I just put some of them in a couple different areas until everything was really just a perfect fit at the top there, a nice tight fit. And you didn't notice where I had shimmed it up. And here's what the tiles look like on the back side. It looks like they took hot glue and just put the pieces together when they made them. Thought I'd just show you another view of this, just to let you see that they're not really that flat a piece. And the Evolution Rage did do a good job. It did get pretty messy, but I was able to get that all blown off and cleaned off, so didn't damage that any. Then I had I had purchased a piece of slate. It's like about a 1/2 inch thick slate tile to use just to make some edging for the those 2 setbacks there on the sides. And here again I went out and I used that Harbor Freight saw because I wanted to cut it on it's a 15-degree angle that I just wanted to taper it on. So I wound up using that saw, and turns out this piece of slate here was really a lot harder than the stuff that they use for making the tiles for the wall. This one did take quite a while to cut through. You had to go real slow, and it did cut good though, but it was a messy job just cutting off that one piece of trim. So I cut it off the long side so I could split that piece in half and have a piece for both sides. And then it was just a matter of just kind of marking off where I had to do the final trimming on the bottom of that piece of window trim there. I just had to take a little more of a notch out of there. So I held it in place, marked it up, and got out that multi-tool again there. But this time I had gone to Home Depot to buy some blades, and they wanted like $20 for one blade. And the guy at the counter there showed me that in the Christmas section they had these kits with like 14 blades for I think it was $38, and there's some really nice carbide grip blades and stuff like that. So I grabbed one of these, so I'll have a lifetime supply of blades now. I thought it was a pretty good deal that they and they only had it for Christmas, I guess. So I got a new blade on there, and it's just a matter. These tools are really great for trying to trim in tight spots, or if you're putting new flooring down or something like that, and you have to trim the thickness of the flooring off of the door trims and stuff like that, they really do a good job. And they're fairly easy to use, and you can pick them up. I got this one, I think, was $19 at Harbor Freight. So got the corner cut out, and my piece of trim there fit in there, and I was a little too lazy to mix up mortar. I was going to mortar it in place, but I just had some of that low odor latex type contact or construction adhesive left over, so I decided I was just going to use that. I put a blob it out on the wall. I drew a line first so I wouldn't go over it, over the area where the tile would be, so it would be exposed. And I just stuck a layer of that a couple places, and then slid the tile in. And like I said, I got it on a 15-degree angle, so I just cut a couple pieces of wood just to make sure everything was sitting at the right angle when it went in there, and till the glue dried. And then I just put a little bit of masking tape on there just to hold it in place and keep it from slipping until the glue was all set up properly. This latex stuff just isn't the instant grab like the other one is. That's real smelly. So I got the pieces on both sides put in place there, and had to let them dry for a while. And then I wanted to mount some hooks. I wanted to get rid of my big fireplace tool set, so I just wanted 2 pieces out of it. So I picked up some hooks, and I had an old piece of bubinga laying around from years ago, and I decided to just make a little backing because the stone, there was no flat spot to actually be able to mount these hooks on. So I had to cut a little block of the wood, and there you can see that Frood Premier Fusion blade. It just sucks when you go to do a rip with it. It burns everything. And so I just cut the block up, and then I rounded some corners on it, and put a couple coats of Danish oil on it, and it was ready to mount the hooks on. Now I had to drill some holes for anchors, so I just put some masking tape on there and marked out where the holes are. And I got a piece of wet paper towel to catch anything that fell down in the dust from drilling. And I just used a carbide masonry bit. I decided not to use a hammer drill because I was afraid I was near the edges, and I was afraid I might split something. So I just used the masonry bit, and that actually did a good job of nice clean hole through there with no cracking or delaminating of anything. And then I had some of these inserts made for concrete, and it was just a matter of just push them in the hole, and I just had to tap it in until it was flush in there. And so I got I had to drill 2 holes there, same thing. The wet paper towel worked pretty good for catching stuff. But if you look, you'll see that there's no flat spot on there. So I had to take that piece of bubinga down in the shop and actually carve away the back of it to kind of make it match the pattern of the stone there, so I could actually get it to sit flush and level and flat on the wall for installing the hooks. I got the second hole drilled there, and just pushed another insert in that, and then screwing the piece on, and you can see how it's kind of notched out. If you look at the back of it, it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle almost to get it so it would sit flat. The only way I could really get the hooks to look decent, so I just screwed that down, got that mounted in place, and then the hardware that came with the hooks was actually a little bit long, so I had to trim that out because if it went past the thickness of the bubinga there, it would they would stick into the stone and not tighten. So I got this this block mounted down really good, and then I just pre-drilled some holes for the hooks. You can see them just below those holes. Well, I checked it for level, but it was right on when it went in there. And then I just used used the screws that came with the hooks and just put them over the other screws to hide them. So, it made it a real easy way to mount this and not have to worry about, everything being cockeyed. Plus, it spaces it out so the tools won't be rubbing up against the wall. So, there it is, and there's we just use the little shovel and the little poker with the wood stove. So I was able to take the other big rack out with the other tools on it, and just have these there. And then I needed some trim, so I went out and got a piece of my rough cut walnut, and this stuff's been sitting for about 5-6 years, and it was nice and dry. It's about 1 inch thick to start out with. So I jointed that down and had to plane it some to get it down to pretty much thickness that I wanted, and then started ripping it up into pieces for the moldings. It's real nice having your own rough cut wood, because probably a piece of walnut like that, if you went out to buy it, would probably cost you $100. And with the rough cut, wood, having that, you really doesn't cost you anything. So, then I had to go back and plane it down to the required thickness. And I've been getting good use out of that Wixie gauge that I put on the planer. That's it's really been a handy little item. And one thing I did find out is sometimes I'll walk away and forget to turn it off, and it actually does turn itself off. If you go back later to look at it, it does shut down, so the batteries in it should last a while. But it's really accurate, and it's worked good so far. And then I just had to round some edges on it, so took a couple of pieces over to the router table and just clean them up a little. And a couple pieces I had to actually notch out to fit around the trim on both sides of the fireplace here. And so those pieces are all done. And then the longer strips, I wound up taking a cut out of the back of them, so I could actually overlay them on the edge of the bricks by, I think it was about 3/8 of an inch I decided to go for, because everything wasn't quite perfect when you put it together. And if you just put them flat on the outside up there, there would have been some little tiny gaps. So this turned out the easiest way. And then I sanded them down a little bit and went back and just put a couple coats of Danish oil on them. And this stuff, it's really nice on walnut. It gives it a nice matte finish, and you put on 3 coats of that and a coat of wax, and it comes out real nice, and doesn't take that long to dry or anything, and doesn't really smell that bad either. So I got them all all made and ready to put up. And the last thing was to just go upstairs and install them, and then the job was done. I also decided to just put these up with the construction adhesive too. I really didn't have a lot of any studs behind the areas where they were going in, and there was no real way to put brads into the concrete board or anything. So I put a little double-sided tape on the back of them just to hold them in place while the construction adhesive was drying. There you can kind of see the tape I put on there. And so I just put adhesive where I wanted to mount them, and then I just kind of put them in place. And when I pushed them tight up against the wall in the back, it's a real good double-sided tape, and that just holds them right in place, and that'll keep them good until the adhesive gets a chance to dry. So I got that piece in there, and any little tiny drips or anything you can clean up with a wet paper towel with that stuff too, because it's all latex based. So I was amazed at how good the color of the walnut actually went between with the stone and the color of the paint that we chose. So then next I just had to finish putting up the strips on the side, and I did the same thing. I did construction adhesive and a little bit of double-sided tape on the back of them, and there's the strip on the left-hand side all put in place, and kind of finished off the rough edges real nice. And, there you can see, pretty much I'm getting near done now. And I did have these couple of LED candle sconces that I mounted up there too. Then I put the other trim up on the other side, and I ran into a little problem where there was a little bit of a bow in the wall that it wouldn't sit flat. So I had to just pry it in place until the adhesive set up on it, which didn't take long. Then with all the trim up, I just kind of had to go back. I had a couple little tiny spots that I messed up in the paint. See, now I painted it all before I started. I had to go back and just touch up like 3 little spots where I nicked into the paint or hit it with some mortar or something like that. So there it is. It's basically all finished now. Everything's done. Time to clean up and move on to something else. Now, I did, have some problems with my camera part of the way through this, so there's footage here now patched together from 3 different cameras and different frames per second rates and stuff like that. So I'm not sure how it's going to process out in the end, but this is just the final look, and we did get some Christmas stuff put out, and there's the my wife's orchids on that rustic bench I made. I still have to finish that up, and there's her other stand, and what it looks like at night. The LED candles really do bring it out and look real nice at night. So in the end, I'm real happy how it came out, and it was really not that expensive a job. I think I have a lot of the tiles left over for the other side when I redo the kitchen, and I think it cost me maybe about $350 for everything, and I really think it made a big difference. That was really well worth it, and it was not that hard a job. My wife even found a Himalayan salt lamp, they call them, that matches the paint perfectly when it's illuminated. Just want to wish everybody a happy holiday. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.